Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cracking open 3 mysterious case files to objectively untangle the massive lore surrounding the Greys. Using the direct evidence we've gathered, we're going to sift through physical artifacts, eyewitness accounts, and geographical data to see exactly what is fueling one of the most enduring mysteries of our modern age.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we're unlocking the Starchild Skull. Second, we'll look at encounters with the Greys. And third, we'll dig into the rumors of Dulce Base and the Greenbrier precedent.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Unlocking the Starchild Skull.
Right off the bat, we've got to ask the defining question of this entire investigation. When we examine this famous artifact, are we looking at something genuinely extraterrestrial, or is this just a really tragic human anomaly?
So, the source data tells us this is a 900-year-old skull, found by a teenage girl exploring a cave in Mexico's Copper Canyon back in the 1930s. The context here is key. It was actually found lying right next to a completely normal adult human skull. But this artifact, which has come to be known as the Starchild, is wildly unusual. It's highly asymmetrical, and it is notably missing its entire lower jaw and facial structure. Because it's so incomplete, it naturally acts as a blank canvas for some fiercely competing theories.
And that leaves us with 2 very distinct objective interpretations of the exact same physical object. On one side, you've got medical experts and special effects pros. They look at this asymmetry and see a human face suffering from a severe deformity, specifically a condition called hydranencephaly. They argue that if you just add hair, adjust the skin tone, and add regular eyes, you're literally just looking at a human being with a misshapen skull. But believers completely flip the script. They argue this asymmetry isn't a disease at all. They see it as the result of generations of crossbreeding, an alien-human hybrid that's slowly conforming to human biology over time. No matter which side you lean toward, this gives us a fascinating physical window into the ongoing debate over what a Grey might actually look like.
Moving right along to Section 2, Encounters with the Greys.
If we really want to understand the modern image of the Grey, we have to trace its historical footprint. This timeline shows how these descriptions evolved over nearly 40 years. We kick things off in 1961 with the legendary Betty and Barney Hill case. Then, the image just explodes into mainstream pop culture in the 70s with movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Finally, we jump ahead to 1998 with a highly detailed and honestly bizarre highway encounter reported by a woman named Miriam Delicado. Let's break down where this iconic image really started.
The absolutely crucial point here is that Betty and Barney Hill's 1961 hypnosis session gave us the foundational blueprint for the Greys. This shaped almost every single later depiction on TV and in film. The 1961 template established them as being about 4.5 feet tall, featuring massive heads, squiggly arms, thin legs, no nose, and just a tiny slit for a mouth. It's actually striking how this exact 1961 description became the universal, go-to standard for what an alien is supposed to look like in the public consciousness.
But you know, the narrative isn't always that straightforward. Take Miriam Delicado's 1998 encounter up in northern British Columbia. Her experience takes a much more complex turn, breaking down into 4 distinct steps. First, her car was stopped dead on a highway, plunging everyone inside into a state she described as suspended animation. Second, she was escorted out by short, cold-handed Greys. But here's the crazy twist. These Greys were completely servile. They acted almost like emotionless robots. Step 3, they led her to a 50-foot craft where she didn't meet some sort of Grey leader, but rather tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed aliens. And finally, Step 4, these tall beings claimed to be caretakers of Earth. They showed her timelines of planetary catastrophes like earthquakes and massive solar flares and warned against earthly destruction. It's a huge shift from the standard narrative, right? It frames the Greys not as the masterminds, but merely as worker helpers in a much larger cosmic hierarchy.
Okay, let's pivot to our final chapter, Section 3, Rumors of Dulce Base and the Greenbrier precedent.
To take any of these stories seriously, we've got to ask the practical question that grounds this whole phenomenon. If they're actually here, where are they hiding? Whether we're talking about real extraterrestrials or just top-secret government projects studying them, massive operations require massive, concealed infrastructure.
And that brings us to Dulce, New Mexico, a tiny, remote town about 200 miles from Albuquerque. Deep-rooted rumors, which really blew up in the 1980s via the so-called Dulce Papers, suggest there's a massive underground facility built right inside Archuleta Mesa. The documents claim this is a hub for top-secret genetic engineering and experimentation. And the sheer scale? It's reportedly a staggering 4.8 miles in diameter. That is huge.
But is that actually physically possible? Well, an on-site geological assessment by an archaeologist revealed a pretty fascinating two-layered story. The top layer of the mesa is columnar basalt, which basically means it's way too fragmentary and brittle for heavy drilling. But the bottom layer? That consists of structurally sound basalt and sandstone. So purely from an engineering standpoint, it is theoretically possible for human engineers to hollow out an underground base there, provided they start at the bottom of the mesa and tunnel their way up.
Now, even if the rock is stable, a massive logistical hurdle remains. Could the government truly hide a massive, top-secret facility right in plain sight? You might naturally write off a secret mountain base in New Mexico as pure science fiction. But before we do that, let's pause and consider a very real historical reality check.
Check out this number, 112,544. This isn't a rumored statistic or an estimate. This is the exact square footage of a completely verified, completely secret earthly base that existed without the public's knowledge for decades.
We call this the Greenbrier precedent. Located in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, the U.S. government successfully built a massive continuity of government congressional bunker directly beneath the 721-room luxury resort. Built between 1958 and 1961, this place featured 18-ton camouflaged vault doors, a 60-day food supply, full hospitals, and dormitories. And how did they build it without anyone noticing? The construction crews literally posed as TV repairmen. For over 30 years, thousands of completely oblivious hotel guests walked right past its hidden doors. It remained an absolute, heavily guarded secret until a Washington Post article finally blew its cover in the 1990s. And this brings us to a major takeaway. To echo the words of an actual Greenbrier employee who lived and worked through the cover-up, best way to keep a secret? Hide it in plain sight. The Greenbrier proves that. With the right cover, massive government engineering projects can exist right under our noses, completely undetected by the general public. Which leaves us here. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If a 112,000 square foot bunker can be successfully hidden beneath a bustling luxury hotel for decades, what else is buried right beneath our feet? Whether it's the heavily debated genetics of a skull in Mexico, the chilling consistency of eyewitness abductions, or the structural possibilities of a remote mesa in New Mexico, the shadows are clearly there. It's up to us to keep analyzing the evidence. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning.